This is a generational heist for the Houston Rockets, as new reports have come out saying that the Rockets are in line to trade for Derek White and pair him back up with head coach Ime Udoka once again. We'll bring you all the latest on the Rockets right here on Rockets Digest. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews and appreciate you joining us today. And the support has been absolutely insane. We are now closing in on 4,000 subscribers. We have gained almost 2,000 in the past month, and I cannot thank you enough. And like a rocket, we're going to keep on going up. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned in. We've got a lot of interesting content coming your way. Streams, game streams, all that to come. The 2025-2026 season is about to be a movie here on Rockets Digest. Now, we know the Rockets have done a lot this offseason. Obviously, Kevin Durant is the biggest move of the offseason for any of the NBA teams, quite frankly, not just the Rockets, but that's just a part of the picture. You look at Steven Adams and re-signing him. You get Ime Udoka on a long-term contract for the Houston Rockets. You think about the way that the Rockets have been able to form their roster with Dorian Finney-Smith and Clint Capella on free agency. They extended Jabari Smith Jr. to keep him in a Rockets jersey for the foreseeable future. You get Fred VanVleet on a more team-friendly deal, and this team has flourished and signed and done great moves, and credit where credit is due. Rafael Stone has done a fantastic job. But at the same time, could there be another trade still on the horizon? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we first have to kind of go through a little bit of some house cleaning. Obviously, we know the Celtics are in an interesting position because they were above the second apron, and Brad Stevens of the Boston Celtics has said multiple times, we are not going to be at that second apron when the luxury tax kicks in. We're not going to be paying that. And they've already dumped off Kristaps Porzingis alongside with Jrue Holiday, but they're still kind of around that area. And this trade would dump $118 million to one of the top West teams here, obviously talking about the Houston Rockets. Now, I do look at this as an interesting situation, specifically because Derek White, as a shooting guard would be my position for him, would be a perfect fit for this team. He could come in and you can make Amen Thompson a 1, or, quite frankly, you could make Derek White the 1. Now, again, we trust Fred VanVleet, we trust Amen Thompson, and if this trade were to happen, it'd probably require a couple big items for that. So that would kind of be a pretty big thing for the Rockets to have to look at when it comes to making this trade. Now, quite frankly, Derek White is one of those guys that you look at and say, yeah, he's probably worth a couple of those big guys, especially with the way he has flourished over the past couple of years. And quite frankly, him and Ime Udoka have had a long-standing history. You talk about Derek White when he was back with the San Antonio Spurs. Guess who was an assistant coach there? Oh, that's right, it was Ime Udoka. Then, of course, they overlapped for the year that Ime Udoka was a head coach of the Boston Celtics, leading them to the 2022 finals, losing to another shocker, the Golden State Warriors, because they're all over the place at this point. So what exactly would have to happen for this trade to go down? Well, that's kind of where we start with a little bit of the Boston Celtics story behind it. You see here, Jonathan Vanek of Yahoo Sports says, quote, with the Boston Celtics facing harsh penalties imposed for being above the so-called second apron payroll limit, president of basketball operations Brad Stevens was left with no choice but to break up the team that had won the 2024 NBA championship. We obviously know now that Kristaps Porzingis is an Atlanta Hawk. Jrue Holiday is a Trailblazer. And yet, they're still paying Tatum, who's not going to play this year. They're still playing Jalen Brown, and there's talks that they were going and are willing still to trade Jalen and to trade Derek White. The price is the question mark that we're still kind of looking for. We continue on with the report, obviously, kind of bringing back the fact that Ime Udoka was with Derek White, and here it is from Christopher Gasper of the Boston Globe saying, Rockets coach Ime Udoka was one of the driving forces behind the Celtics trading for White in 2022 when Ime Udoka guided them to the NBA Finals, end quote. Him and Derek White have a very good and outstanding relationship. Now, the funny part about this, and the reason why we've done trade videos on Jalen Brown, we've talked about him, and this one I'm focusing more on Derek White because I think he, of the two, would be a more viable option, specifically because that's who the Rockets would want. If you remember, Christopher Gasper of Boston Globe has a report, but obviously, the two of Ime Udoka and Derek White overlapped when he was an assistant at San Antonio. And then here's the piece that maybe some people are forgetting. ESPN's Brian Windhorst reported that the Rockets were ready to pounce on Derek White if he didn't re-sign with the Celtics last summer, end quote. Now, obviously, the Celtics, trying to go for that back-to-back championship, re-signed Derek White, and he bought into the Boston stuff. But now, as Brad Stevens sits, trying to reconstruct this Boston Celtics squad, he wants picks. He wants some players. He's trying to figure out how to make this a year where the Celtics can grow without Tatum and have, be good in the next couple of years, and that's great. But the Rockets can benefit from this by potentially going out and getting Derek White. I truly believe he is very undervalued, and his stats only show half the picture of Derek White. Now, he's just 31 years old, 16.4 points per game, but he can go off. In fact, he has scored 40 points multiple times in his career. And an interesting stat, when making this video and doing research, I found out there are a pair of players for the Boston Celtics that have scored 40 points together in one game, and it's only been done one time in franchise history. You would think it'd be, Bird's in there, right? Or Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Those are the two, right? No. It was Derek White and Peyton Pritchard. Derek White is a sharp shooter, and when he gets hot, get out of the way, because he will hit every shot. If you remember watching some of the Rockets and Celtics games this year, he did very well, and he is a sharp shooter and get out and become a very good offensive threat, especially with the Rockets at shooting guard kind of being an interesting position. Amen Thompson, again, being 6'7", is not your typical shooting guard. That's not the guy you're like, oh yeah, that guy's a shooting guard. No, that's not how it is. He's also a defensive guru, Amen Thompson is, and I think he's going to be good this year. I think he's going to be one of the breakout players of the Rockets this upcoming season. But is Derek White worth it, is the true question mark for this Houston Rockets team. Here is a quote, again, from Jonathan Vanek of Yahoo Sports, saying, according to reports, the Celtics have already made it clear to teams inquiring about White that to get it would take a package similar to what Brooklyn had to go and trade Mikal Bridges for with the New York Knicks. Now, you're probably sitting here, and we don't know what the heck was in that Mikal Bridges trade package from Brooklyn to New York. I say Brooklyn. Brooklyn is New York, whatever. But either way, here's the official trade package, and I'll kind of have to lean forward here, but it was 4 first-round picks plus another first-round pick from Milwaukee and an unprotected pick swap plus a second-round pick for Mikal Bridges. First of all, that was a wild trade when it happened. Second of all, that's a lot, because if the Rockets were to do that, they could give you a better player than, what was that, Bogdanovich? That was Bojan Bogdanovich? Yeah, you're going to get a better player from the Houston Rockets than that. But the picks that the Rockets still have are going to be very valuable to them over the next couple seasons because they traded away so many of their second-round picks. They have 2 second-round picks in the 2026 NBA draft. They still have a first-round pick in 2027 and a first-round pick, obviously, from the Phoenix Suns in 2029, or I guess that's Dallas's technically, but either way, they've got a bunch of first-round picks still. The second-round picks are what they had to give up for Kevin Durant, plus the measly 10 overall pick this year, which Kaman Malawash was a very good draft pick, don't get me wrong, but I would 100% take Kevin Durant with that trade than getting Kaman Malawash when we already have Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams and now Clint Capella. Like, that's we're good. We're fine. I don't need that. I would have honestly drafted Derek Queen if I was in that position. That's besides the point, though. The player, though, is the interesting one, because you think about the names mentioned in this article. Jay Pritchard of Nesson says that Gasper highlighted names like Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and Reed Sheppard that could headline a trade package. And again, as I said, Bojan Bogdanovich is not as good or as valuable because I think he just retired even ways. But Reed Sheppard is 21, not even 21, and he's got a lot of people saying he's really good. Tari Eason, obviously Jabari Smith Jr. just got extended. So the likelihood of this trade is an interesting one because the only player that I see the Rockets even remotely giving up is Reed Sheppard. Because, quite frankly, Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr. and Amen Thompson were 3 of the do-not trades. And you're going to have to throw the bank at us to get them in any trade talks that the Houston Rockets have had. Whether it be for Kevin Durant, any Giannis talks they've had. Frankly, Amen Thompson and Tari Eason have been untradeable, and Jabari Smith Jr. has been as close to that as possible. For that reason, Reed Sheppard is the pick. And I don't know that I'm ready to give up on Reed Sheppard because I fully believe he could come up and be, I'm not going to say as good as Derek White, but he is going to be a very good shooting guard. And he is a typical shooting guard at 6'2", just turned 21 years old, very young, a third overall pick, 4.4 points per game, yes, this past season. But he is expected to have a bigger role. And we know from previous videos and previous reports that in terms of Reed Sheppard and Cam Whitmore, the Rockets are 100% picking Reed Sheppard. So for that reason, it's going to be an interesting idea if the Rockets would even commit to trading. And so the idea that I had for a trade would, I don't have a graphic for it, but basically what I would put out there would be a Cam Whitmore, because frankly, the Rockets don't really care. Cam Whitmore, Reed Sheppard, and I would give them 2 first-round picks in a second. I don't know if that's worth it, but would you make that trade? Is there a trade you would make for Derek White? Is there a form of Reed Sheppard or Cam Whitmore and picks that you would give up to trade for Derek White? Now, the money is the problem because obviously he's getting paid a good paycheck, so you'd probably have to work around some money issues, but there's a way. If there's a will, there's a way also. If you're trying to win an NBA championship, going over the first apron is something you really have to do. In fact, I think the Oklahoma City Thunder was the first team to not go over the luxury tax since that had been implemented to win an NBA title. So, I mean, the Rockets will be the second if they don't trade. I think they'll win it even if without Derek White, and that's probably why we don't make the trade. But it's an interesting topic, and since seeing him in San Antonio and now in Boston, I'm a big fan of Derek White. And I think him and Ime Udoka would have they do have a very good relationship, but bringing him to Houston I think that would make this team unstoppable, personally. You talk about Amen Thompson, Fred VanVleet, Derek White, Tari Eason, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Şengün, Clint Capella, and Steven Adams. There's not a better roster in the league, straight up. You can say the Oklahoma City Thunder, you can say what you want, but I don't think there's a better roster in the league if you have that. Let me know your thoughts on this topic down in the comment section, but that's all we got for you today here on Rockets Digest. We appreciate you joining us and making it to the end of the video. You're a real one. For now, though, we'll say peace out from H-Town. See you guys.